Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. My guest today is one of India's most widely regarded and highly viewed bloggers. He's recently published a book, and here it is. It's called Disappearing Democracy, Dismantling of a Nation. And this book holds up a telling mirror to several aspects of India's society, including our Prime Minister, as well as one of our most popular actors. Joining me now to discuss what this mirror reveals of Indian society, the Prime Minister, and that so far unnamed actor is the author himself, the very popular Avay Shukla. Avay Shukla, your book is called Disappearing Democracy, Dismantling of a Nation. Is that your overall view of the situation facing India today? Our democracy is disappearing, and as a result, our nation is being dismantled.
Yes, indeed, Karan. Democracy is a concept which is operationalized by various structures and institutions. What is happening in India today is these institutions and principles are being dismantled one by one. You take the institutions, whether it's parliament, whether it is the interstate council between states, whether it is your bureaucracy, whether it is the defense forces, the universities, the autonomous institutions like the Election Commission, the RBI, etc., the commissions like the Right to Information Commission. These are all being dismantled by executive action or legislative action one by one. This can only have a very adverse effect on our democratic polity. In addition to this, society is also being dismantled through the weaponizing of language, religion, regional factors, and as a result, the plural society we've been used to for the last 50 years, the brotherhood, the tolerance, the respect for other religions is all disappearing one by one. That too will ultimately have its effect on democracy.
I'll come in a very substantial way to talk about the dismantling of society. You have several very revealing essays on that subject. But let me start instead with what you say about the Prime Minister. You make a very telling comment about Narendra Modi. Now, we all know that Mr. Modi has a soaring ambition and he has enormous self-confidence. But you analyze that ambition in a very careful way. You call it, and I'm quoting you, a schizophrenic ambition, almost a Jekyll and Hyde affliction, because it comprises two incompatible and opposing elements. On the one hand, there's the Vishwa Guru. On the other hand, there's the Hindu Samrat syndrome. And you say, Mr. Modi desperately wants to be a global statesman and leader. He also wants to be the last Hindu emperor, the ruler who restored Hinduism to its pedestal. But you add, his dilemma is he cannot be both. Can you explain to the audience why can he not be both?
His two aspirations are mutually incompatible because the path to being a Vishwaguru cannot be the path to being a Hindu Hriday Samrat, as he calls himself. To be a global statesman, Karan, You need to abide by, respect, and follow international covenants, rules of the world order, certain principles, values, etc., relating to human rights, press freedom, freedom of the judicial apparatus, religious freedom, etc., etc. We are not doing that. Every single indicator, we may be denying them, but every single indicator indicates that we are slipping down the ladder of democracy. We are from a flawed democracy, we have become an autocracy, and God knows where we will be headed after the 2024 elections. So that will impact Mr. Modi's perception as the global statesman. And it is already visible in the sense that he is a self-confessed leader of the global south. But as we see after the Israel-Palestine affair, he is isolated in the global south. So that is why he can't be a global statesman. And the reason why all this is happening is because his aspiration to be a Hindu samrat clashes with the requirements of being a global statesman. Here he has to promote one religion at the cost of other, suppress dissent, imprison people who are opposed to him, persecute the minorities, etc. That is necessary for being a Hindu samrat. So you see, the two cannot exist in the same package. He has to decide whether he wants to be one or the other.
In fact, in your essay, you go one step further. You say genuine international acceptance of leadership requires what you call a moral core. That moral core, you say, is missing in Mr. Modi because he's a religious revivalist. He's promoting one religion, as you said, at the cost of others, and therefore bigotry flourishes, majoritarianism reigns, minorities are marginalized. But if a man has a moral core or lacks a moral core, rather, are you suggesting that he's a flawed human being?
I put it another way, insofar as the moral dimension is concerned, Karan. And it's like this. Mr. Modi does not perhaps recognize or acknowledge the binary between moral and immoral. He is essentially amoral. Neither he doesn't recognize that there can be two. He is amoral because of his exaggerated narcissism and his this messiah complex. He feels, and he has said so a number of times in public, that he is God's chosen one. He is the messenger of God to do whatever he is doing. Now, this is some kind of a paranoia, and much beyond issues of being moral or amoral. He feels that he can do no wrong, that whatever he does is right, and therefore the question of being moral or immoral does not arise. Now, whether he is a flawed human being, history will tell us. Right now, in his own perception and in the perception of large numbers in this country, he is a very successful human being.
Tell me something. When a man believes that he's the messenger of God, that he's been chosen by God, that he's been sent to earth to fulfill God's mission, is that delusional? Is Modi being delusional when he speaks of himself in that way?
I would think so. I would think so. Although probably it would require a qualified psychologist or a psychiatrist to attempt that kind of a diagnosis. But what goes along with this very unfortunately, and which is what this country has to deal with and is suffering, is it involves a total lack of empathy, a total lack of compassion. I mean, it would be no exaggeration to say that in the last 75 years, we've probably never had a leader, a prime minister, who is so utterly lacking in compassion, and which has been on display time and again, whether it is students, whether it is farmers, whether it is female wrestlers, whether it is people, thousands of people being evicted and bulldozed into a migratory status, whether it was the COVID migrations, whether it was the COVID deaths. Mr. Modi does not appear to be a man of compassion, which is another reason why he cannot be a global statesman.
So you're saying, if I hear you correctly, that Mr. Modi could be delusional. He believes he's God's messenger on earth. He has a total lack of empathy and compassion. He lacks a moral core because he doesn't have a clear sense of right and wrong. He's amoral, as you say. He doesn't believe that he's capable of doing wrong. That sounds to me as if he is a very flawed personality because he has no criteria by which he has to judge himself. Everything that he does in his own eyes is always right. There's no way in which he could be wrong.
Yes, yes, it would appear like that, and that also explains why he is less than honest with the truth most of the time. I won't use the phrase that he is lying all the time, but he's certainly very economical with the truth in his public speeches and everywhere. And the thing is, if you ask the question, what value or principle does Mr. Modi stand for other than winning elections? Is there one consistent principle or value, a moral value, which he has enunciated and adhered to? I've thought about this very deeply, and I cannot find one.
You really seriously mean that the man who's Prime Minister of India does not stand for any moral values other than winning elections?
Yes, and power, and holding on to power.
Then surely this is
anything which is grist to this mill is acceptable to Mr. Modi.
Power is the sole thing that he cares about.
Absolutely. In order, perhaps in his own perception, in order to do what God has commanded him to do.
So delusional, power hungry, lacking in empathy and compassion, amoral, believing that everything that he does is right because he does it. That surely is, and I'm repeating this again, a flawed personality.
I leave your viewer to judge on that basis. I mean, I've laid out my views, and let the viewer come to a conclusion.
Okay. Now, your view of Narendra Modi also connects with your essays where you make searing comments about the sort of country India is becoming. And no doubt you're talking about the country India has become over the last 10 years when Mr. Modi was Prime Minister. You write, and I'm quoting you, we have become a country of beasts, not so much of the lion and wolf variety as of the porcine one. Our collective social values have all but collapsed into a stinking pool of prejudices, ignorance, triumphalism, and religious intolerance. Can you explain why you believe we've become a country of pigs?
We have become what Mr. Nirad Chaudhary about 50 years ago termed the continent of serfs. We have become animalized, if I can use that word, over the last 10 years. And by we, I'm talking now of society, not the government. A lot of it is due to the actions of the government, certainly. But we as a society, the middle class, the wanted urban middle class, which apparently has grown by 100 million since COVID, etc. We have become totally insensitive to the the other 90% of the country, how they live, how they survive, how they die. It started with it became evident during the COVID thing, and it is gaining ground every single day. The kind of intolerance which we find in our WhatsApp groups, resident welfare associations, the media, our drawing room conversations, etc., is very alarming. And makes me feel very sad. What have we descended to? But it's not surprising, Karan. There is a theory which explains this. There was a British historian in the earlier 20th century called Sir Ian Kershaw. And he came out with this theory of radicalization of societies. Radicalization can be synonymous with brutalization. And his study was based on a long assessment and study which he did of Nazi Germany in the 30s and 40s to explain why a society, a progressive society, descended to the post-Nazi, post-Hitler frame of mind. If you have time, I can explain that. But that applies totally ipso facto to what is happening in India today.
But you go one step further. You say, we have become a country of beasts, not so much of the lion and wolf variety as of the porcine one. Porcine is the adjective for pigs. You believe we are behaving like pigs, or to put it in Hindi, we have become like sewer.
I do. And it brings Animal Farm to mind, instantly. We have become like that, and it's a process which starts with the supreme leader, according to Kershaw, and goes down through 7 different filters or layers, which includes the bureaucracy, the police, the institutions, the civil services, the media, and finally ends in society. And at every level, the message of the supreme leader, which is essentially one of lack of empathy, of persecution, of a majoritarian supremacy, of bigotry, at every stage that message is being amplified further. Till by the time it reaches society, you have only 2 choices left. Either you become a believer or you become a silent acceptor, which is what most of society in India today has become. We have that 37% which supports the BJP, the hardcore. It may be 45, it may be 50 in 2024. It doesn't really matter. They are the believers, and they are the non-state actors now. The government doesn't have to do anything. It has outsourced this persecution, hatred, and bigotry to the non-state actors, the vigilantes, the various groups which go around demanding lynching, etc., etc. And the others are the silent acceptors. We are the silent acceptors.
And the truth, Mr. Shukla, is that you firmly blame both the BJP and the government for this. You're right. We have become a brutalized civilization under the tutelage of a government that lacks any modicum of compassion. Elsewhere, you say hatred, majoritarianism, intolerance, lack of accountability, religious fanaticism has been steadily spreading its poisonous tentacles as the BJP has consolidated itself and its rule. So both the Modi government and the BJP are responsible for the fact that we have become a country of beasts, of, to be precise, pigs.
Well, they initiated the process, certainly, and they've been strengthening it ever since. But we can't absolve ourselves of the blame and lay it entirely at the door of the BJP. What happened? I mean, look at the India we were in 2012 when Nirbhaya happened. And tens of thousands gathered on the boat club lawns for weeks on end, and in other parts of India also. What happened after Kathua rape, or the Hathras rape, or the beating up of students in JNU and Jamia Millia, or the assault on the wrestlers? No protests happen. Of course, a lot of that is due to the fact that protests are discouraged and the government comes down with a heavy hand. But that is not the whole explanation. The other explanation is either we have become believers, like I said, or we have become silent acceptors. And for that, the blame has to be taken by society, not the polity alone.
In one of your essays, you illustrate in a very revealing and telling way the contrast between the response to the Nirbhaya rape in 2012 and the response to the unjustified release of Bilkis Banu's rapists in 2022. Am I right in saying that you believe that in just 10 years, which is a very short span of time, to be honest, we have swung from a people whose response to Nirbhaya was admirable to a people whose response to Bilkis Bano is condemnable?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. And for that, something has happened in our mindset. We can't blame the government alone.
Answer that question. What has happened to our mindset? What is it that's changed in us?
Well, like I said, half of us are believers. Half of us actually believe that what the government is doing is correct. The heavy-handed violence which the government is perpetrating on various sections of society, of which it disapproves, we actually feel they're correct. There are people in my own extended family who feel that Muslims have no place in India. That CAA is fine, the Rohingyas being evicted is fine. So that is half of it. At least they are honest. They are the honest ones who they put their money where their mouth is. But the
But
other
you're
half is silent.
but you're saying it's the influence of the government, either
Yes.
on the believers or on those who are silent and choose not to speak out. But it's the influence of the government that is responsible for the change.
Like I said, the government has initiated the change, but we have accepted that change.
So did we
We have lost
also?
our own rationality.
So do we also lack a moral core today?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And that is one of the aspects of dismantling of a democracy. Our moral core is being eroded every day, and it will reach a point where it cannot be resurrected again.
So
It's
in other
it's
words, not only, and I'm quoting your book's title, not only is democracy disappearing, not only is the nation being dismantled, but we as a people are diminishing ourselves.
we are we certainly are we are diminishing ourselves, we are degrading ourselves, we are repudiating our history.
In other words, you're less proud of the Indian people today than you were 10 years ago. You're more concerned about them than you were 10 years ago, also.
Yes, yes. And when I talk of the Indian people, I talk of my peers, I talk of my WhatsApp groups, I talk of my colleagues, I talk of the retired IAS groups, I talk of my RWA groups, I talk of the wanted middle class who is only interested in the stock market and the index. Uh, they have no concern for what is happening in the rest of the country and where we are headed. Yes, that's why I keep saying, Karan, that let us not blame the government all the time. That is taking the easy way out.
In other words, the fault lies not in our stars, it lies in ourselves.
In ourselves. Absolutely, it does.
There's another aspect of what you have revealed about the Indian people in your essays that will make people squirm. This first analysis that we have become a nation of pigs, that we have diminished ourselves, that we have degraded ourselves, will itself be surprising and shocking to many. But there's a further thing that you reveal that I want to come to. You say, and I'm quoting you, if there is one quality Indians cannot be accused of, it's the ability to be sensitive. And then you add, the higher up the pecking order or social order one is, the more insensitive one is. Are you saying that we are indifferent, hurtful, frequently abrasive and rude to others, and generally uncaring of others' feelings? We don't care what impact our words or our behavior or our gestures have on others. We're self centered and selfish.
Yes, it's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? On the one hand, we are insensitive to the plight, the pain, the suffering of others, to civil behavior, to the disabled, etc. On the one hand, we, culminating in urinating on a co-passenger on a flight. That's part of it. The paradox lies in the fact that when it comes to our own very personal interests. We are overly sensitive. For example, of late, when it comes to religion, our religion, we are oversensitive to the point of being absolutely ridiculous. And for example, Mahua Moitra, when she says that her goddess Kali, I think it was, smokes and has liquor, look at the furor it raised. When Zubair Ahmed says something, an FIR is registered against him. Forget these people. Take somebody like this lady who won the Booker Prize recently, Gitanjali Shri. An FIR was registered again. She's an International Booker Prize winner, written a phenomenal book based on Indian history and culture and mythology. An FIR was registered against her in Kanpur because somebody's religious feelings were offended. Some other troglodyte, his religious feelings were offended because a lioness was named Sita, who was released in a national park along with a lion named Akbar. He went to the High Court, and the High Court took cognizance of the case, in spite of the fact that it has thousands of other cases pending. So this hurting one's sentiment, religious beliefs, inciting somebody else's religious belief, this is ridiculous. It has no place in a civilized modern society. In fact, I firmly believe, Karan, that sections like Section 153A and 295A of the IPC should be expunged.
Absolutely. Can I interrupt and ask you this? You're talking of an incredible and what you call paradoxical combination: extreme insensitivity towards others. We simply don't care what impact our words, our gestures, our behavior has. We are so self-centered that we don't worry about other people, combined with incredible sensitivity about our religion and any implication, no matter how ludicrous, that it's in some way being insulted. I'm going to quote you. You say this crass insensitivity is now blended with an obnoxious oversensitivity to matters relating to one's own religion. The taking of offense has now reached pandemic proportions. What is it that's made us so heartless, so cruel, so insensitive to others? And what has made us so terribly, horribly thin-skinned about perceived insults to our religion? What explains this combination?
The insensitivity was always there. I would think it's a matter of degree. The insensitivity was always there. The sensitivity to religion, the oversensitivity to religion, Karan, is something I think which has been fostered and encouraged over the last 10 years. It's part of the Hindu supremacy, because it's no coincidence that 99% of these FIRs, etc., are lodged by adherents of this particular faith. It's part of the push. It's part of the push to silence, to marginalize people of other religious communities so that they stop speaking.
In other words, you're saying the Sangh Parivar is behind this?
No, more than the Sangh Parivar, the government is behind it. The government's policies, utterances, silences are behind. Let me give you a very interesting personal anecdote. When my third or fourth book was being published, it was a collection of satirical pieces on India today. I wanted the title to be Loose Cannons and Holy Cows. My publisher wouldn't have it. He said, I can't use the word holy cows in the title. I may get sued. An FIR may be registered again. So then we changed the title to Politics, Democracy, and Mumbo Jumbo, etc. But that's how close to us these feelings have come.
You're saying to me that when a man in UP is alleged to have given offense because he wrapped non-vegetarian food in a newspaper containing pictures of Hindu gods, or when offense is taken because a person in Assam dressed up as Shiva in a street play protesting against inflation, that this is a direct impact of the government's silence, the government's connivance, the government's complicit attempts to other people who are not Hindu, to other Muslims, to other Christians. This is a direct result of the Modi government's policies.
And dog whistles. And this brings me back to the Kershaw's theory of radicalization. You will recollect, I had mentioned that the last stage of radicalization or brutalization is when the government doesn't have to do anything. It has sufficiently motivated and armed the non-state actors on the street to do its job for it. And they're doing the job now. This is just one aspect of that radicalization process, the final aspect.
A thought will have occurred to the audience at this point. I'm going to articulate it and put it to you. When I asked you if Mr. Modi is a flawed personality, you said you leave it to the audience to judge. They'll form their own opinion. Now we've come to the question, is Mr. Modi and his silences, his deliberate connivances, his complicity responsible for making pigs out of us? And I keep emphasizing that word pigs because that's what porcine is. Once again, would you agree or would you leave it to the audience to judge for themselves?
My view, Karan, would be that these strategic silences convey an implicit approval of what is happening, and therefore encourages and motivates the chap on the street, the vigilante, the lumpen guy on the street, to do that without fear of any governmental action. So to that extent, yes, it is the fountainhead in many ways of what is happening.
He's brought out the worst in us.
The continent of Circe.
Quite right. Yes. The continent of Circe.
Absolutely.
I want to raise one more striking and bold opinion that you express in your essays in this book, and I'm holding it up once again for the audience to see. This time, it's not about a politician. It's not about society as a whole, but it's about Shah Rukh Khan, an actor who's an idol for hundreds of millions. But far from admiring him, you are sharply critical of Shah Rukh Khan. You say he never speaks up and is always silent. I'm going to quote you. Shah Rukh Khan has chosen to remain silent these past few years in the face of this government's ever-increasing excesses, hesitant to take a stand, refusing to be counted, hoping that his amoral camouflage of an abject neutrality will make him invisible and allow him to continue to mint his millions undisturbed. I put it to you, Mr. Shukla, those are very strong words. Are they justified by the fact that Shah Rukh Khan prefers to stay silent because that is a way of being safe rather than risk speaking out and incur the wrath of the government?
Yeah, let me answer this in two ways, Karan. Number one, it's not safe to be silent. Not anymore. Today, in the famous words of, who was it?
Martin Niemöller.
No. American President Nixon, was it? Or somebody? Or Bush. If you're not with us, you're against us. That is the current state of affairs. So being silent means you're not with them, and therefore you are a legitimate target. And no one should know it better now than Shah Rukh Khan himself. He stayed silent for 7 years, and look what happened to him and his son. So that's number one. Number two is that I'm not singling out Shah Rukh Khan. I mean, I mentioned him because he typifies a certain very successful segment of our society, whether it is industrialists, celebrities, filmmakers, or whoever, who feel they don't owe anything to society. If you can spend hours on television selling pan masala or real estate, should you not be talking sometime, somewhere, obliquely, if not explicitly or showing some concern about what is happening in this country. Take Shah Rukh Khan, silent throughout whatever was happening to his co-religionists, religionists. His alma mater was being vandalized in Delhi. He kept quiet. Now, okay, the argument normally given is that these people they have to be careful or they have a lot to lose. True, they have a lot to lose, but they already have a lot. And there are others. There's Nasiruddin Shah, there is Javed Akhtar, there is Amir Khan, there is Swara Bhaskar. They speak out in their own ways wherever possible. And they continue to live. Okay, they may be denied a few roles here and there, a few crores here and there, a few endorsements, but you have to give back to society. And that is my complaint against our celebrities. Compare them with
You're saying Shah Rukh Khan is not giving back. He's not standing up. He's not doing what is expected of him, which is to establish a voice that stands for the values we cherish. He's failing to do that.
Yes, because these people are influencers. They have millions of fan followings. They owe it to their fans. They owe it to their success. They owe it to this country to speak out. That's my limit. I'm not targeting him, but
Forgive me.
represents
Actually, you said twice you're not targeting him. You said you're not singling him out, but in fact, that's very much the impression that comes. You compare him adversely, as you did a moment ago, to Javed Akhtar, Nasiruddin Shah, Deepika Padukone, Swar Bhaskar, and even Amir Khan. They, you point out, have spoken out when their religion has been attacked, when actors' films have been banned, or they've even spoken out on issues like the Citizenship Amendment Act and the National Register of Citizens. And I'm quoting you again. They continue to speak up. Not, however, Shah Rukh Khan. Not one word of sympathy, not one gesture of support for the victims, not one whisper of condemnation of the lumpen elements or an autocratic government on a majoritarian high. And again, the question that arises is the one I want to put to you. Does this mean that Shah Rukh may be a bigger star than these people, but he's a smaller human being compared to them?
Absolutely. He is when on the standards of moral uprightness, he is far below these people. And it's not just Shah Rukh I've spoken of, Karan. In my previous book, I've spoken of Mr. Amitabh Bachchan. I've spoken of Mr. Ratan Tata, who also belong to this ilk. People who stand and clap. No, it's not an option anymore. They need to speak out. They need to speak out.
Let me ask you this. Does this failure to stand up for values, particularly when you're rich enough and can afford to do so, does this failure to speak out suggest that Shah Rukh Khan is a flawed personality, that he too lacks a moral core?
No, I wouldn't go so far as that, because I have not seen the other side of Shah Rukh Khan. I mean, he's certainly a very successful filmmaker and actor, but insofar, I've only chosen to speak of one dimension of his morality, as it were, let it be, as it
Morality
were.
or lack of morality? Forgive me,
Sorry?
morality or lack of morality?
No, I mean, you see, if you take morality as a continuum, then you have to divide it into various parts. One part is a public conscience. I found him wanting there. But I don't know about the other part of his continuum, as a family man, as an employer, as a brother, as a sister, as a religious man. I have no idea about that at all.
So when you
I
say,
cannot say.
I'm just picking up on what you said, Shah Rukh Khan lacks a public conscience.
He lacks a public conscience, which is why nobody stood by him when he had to go through his horrendous, absolutely horrendous those events. If you don't stand by others, they will not stand by you. They owe you nothing. And if Shah Rukh Khan feels, or people like him feel, that they owe nothing to society, then the reverse side of the coin is society owes nothing to them.
This is the Martin Niemöller poem, isn't it? When they came for the Jews, I was silent. When they came for the communists, I was silent. And he goes on, and he ends by saying, when they came for me,
There
there
was
was
nobody
no
to
one to
speak.
support me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When will we learn this lesson? I don't know.
But you're saying also that the resounding silence when Shah Rukh's son Aryan was being persecuted, not prosecuted, persecuted, that resounding silence is explained by the fact that Shah Rukh himself was silent when others needed and wanted his support. His
That's right.
failure to stand up for others meant they didn't stand up for his son.
That's right. That's right. I hope he's learned that lesson.
Well, you make that very pointedly. You write, his international contacts could not save him, nor his billions, nor his adoring fans, nor the imposing gates of Mannat. And then you add, he might as well have spoken up when he could. Then at least he would have been deserving of our support for occupying the moral high ground. The only problem is the person who was suffering was not Shah Rukh, it was Aryan, a 21, 22, 23-year-old young man. Did Aryan not deserve our support? And aren't you inflicting, in a real sense, the lapses of the father on the son?
Well, the sins of the father are visited on the son quite often in real life. And certainly, Aryan deserved our sympathy. Uh, and by the way, I think Shah Rukh Khan suffered just as much vicariously as a father. As a father, he suffered just as much. But the point here is that people may have sympathized. I'm sure they did sympathize. They felt strongly about it, but they did not speak about it.
And
That
that's
is the
because he
difference.
was silent in his time.
Right, right. When Riya Chakravarti had to go through all that, when the affair of Rajan Shushant, when all the charges were made of drug addiction amongst the stars and the actors in Hollywood, I mean, these are his own family, his own extended family. He chose to keep quiet. Others, like the ones I mentioned, did not. So,
Not so long ago in this interview, we discussed that quotation of yours. We have become a country of beasts, not so much of the lion and wolf variety as of the porcine one. Is Shah Rukh one of the examples and illustrations of that?
no, well, no, and yes. At the moment, he's more like an ostrich with his head in the sand, uh, or a warthog which has burrowed deep inside. Its burrow, thinking that the lions can't get to him. They will. He doesn't know that they will. So he might as well make a stand.
But Shah Rukh certainly lacks sensitivity for other people's plights because he's silent.
I feel he may be sensitive to it. I don't think he is insensitive in the same way as
So he's
our
just scared.
scared. He's scared. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's scared. But what he's scared of, I don't know. Is he scared of losing roles in films? Is he scared of losing endorsements? Is he scared of his personal freedom? I don't know. But then if we go by some of his other colleagues who have chosen to spoken out, I feel it's more a scare built on commercial considerations rather than anything else.
Finally, Avay Shukla, and I've deliberately left this to the end of this discussion because I think this is the apposite moment to bring it up. You say in your introduction, far too many people these days, in the false security of their cocoons, choose to ignore what is happening around them or simply keep quiet. This book attempts to convince the reader that this indifference is no longer an option. So, is this book, and I'm holding it up again, is this book a wake up call to your fellow Indians?
It is. It very much is so current. And like I mentioned earlier, it's particularly a wake up call to the segment of society in which I live, in which I and you live. The affluent, urbanized, well educated section of society, which doesn't really have much to lose. if they speak out. And therefore, we must preserve the country we have inherited, not for ourselves, but for our children. And I'd like to end, Karan, with just one small quote from Lord Byron, Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. It says, and I quote, "1,000 years scarce serve to build a nation. An hour may lay it in the dust." That is it. A lot of effort, sacrifices have gone into building this nation, and we need to stand up, if not for ourselves, we need to stand up for our country, the country we
Because
were
you're
born.
worried that thousands and thousands of years of making India a great country is being turned to dust in just 10 years.
Yes,
And our indifference or our fear, or as I keep asking, our lack of moral concern is helping that process.
absolutely. And not just a great country, Karan, a great civilization is both are in danger now.
Avay Shukla, thank you very much for that interview. I'll hold up the book once again. There it is, Disappearing Democracy, Dismantling of a Nation. This is a book, if you care about India, I would suggest the audience should buy and read. Mr. Shukla, thank you very much for talking to me. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you, Karan. Always a pleasure. And thank you for giving me a platform to further explain my views. Thank you very much.
A pleasure. Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.